Welcome to the American Farriers Journal Podcast. I'm Jeff Coda. I'm editor of American Farriers Journal. And joining me today is Marshville, North Carolina farrier Mike Stine. Welcome, Mike.
Hello, Jeff. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Doing all right.
Good. I was looking over your bio a little bit, and we've known each other for a while now. And
Yeah.
You got into farrier because of your personal horse. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, started off, had a hard time getting anybody. A friend of mine was going to farrier school. He was going to do it for a living, and I was not. What really drove me to change my path was my horse was my best buddy as a teenager, and I was on my own pretty young, and I ended up with her because she was also abandoned. And I lost her to laminitis in '89. She was put down the same day Secretariat was. I was doing farrier work and doing power line work at the same time. And it was also the same time Hugo rolled through this area like a freight train.
Mm-hmm.
But so there was way too much going on in my life just on the work end of it. But after that, the next year, I said, I felt like, I could put on shoes, I could keep them there, I must be good. I found out I was very inadequate. Mm-hmm. And so from that point forward, I decided every year I was going to do further ed, learn something. If I wasn't constantly learning something, I needed to quit. And so 1990, I rolled into Doc Redden's clinic, and that ran into working with Tony Gonzalez and his cronies and in a number of things, getting involved in several associations and going through some of their programs to whatever degree that I did, in many clinics. So it was like laminitis symposium. I've been a regular with the Hoof-Care Summit. That's how we've gotten to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
And just there's so much out there that you can't cover it all.
Right. Absolutely. You put a big emphasis on evaluating horses.
Right.
Before you even touch the horse. Tell us about how you evaluate the horse and why that's important, how you do it.
Well, my background is, my best buddy for many years was a massage therapist, and he was totally blind, and we ended up doing clinics together. It kind of goes back to Tony and working with Jack Miller and all those guys, because, Jack could pick up on things with a horse in a hurry. And, he'd figure out a way to get it going pretty quick. And just being honored enough to spend a little time around him. And if those who knew Jack was Jack for sure. But, most of the information, you take a horse and you should be able to pretty well figure out how they move with them standing in front of you, and you're confirming them when they step off. When they bring a horse into the barn, walk them on the concrete, listen to them as they come in. If when you're real busy, sometimes we don't get a chance to nitpick and go over horses, but you can learn, keys to pick up on quick. And it's like when I was working with Ray Morris and we were doing the clinics, he said, you feel like a broken record. And he said, you should be able to pick up and, a full cycle of a stride, basically what a horse is doing. And which is true. It's just learning how to pick up on it as years of experience. But, just looking at the muscling, the shape, the shoulder, the wear patterns, most of the time you're going to be pretty right. Down to the old myth of seeing where the mane splits, how the tail hangs. All of it says something about what that horse is doing. Is form follows function, and function follows form. So the conformation deal is we can't change conformation. We can work with what we've got in front of us. Can't change bone length, but we can change a horse if it's like bad posture. We can work with bad posture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you got to figure out the whats and the whys, and that's a lot of years of trial and error, and hopefully work with people that know more than you're putting in a lot of hours with people that know more than I do.
Right. Yeah. I was talking with Danvers Child once, and he was telling me the story about Jack. And the horses were the show horses were getting ready. They were warming up. They were going over some jumps and whatnot. But Jack's back was too the show ring. So he turns and asks Danvers, he says, how many strides did that horse take from the first jump to the jump that's right behind us? And what
Right.
did he tell you? And that story, the fact that all he was doing was listening, and he could
Right.
tell what was going on with that horse, is just sort of amazing to me.
Yeah. Yeah. The blind friend of mine, we would, when we did clinics, work together, we'd get people together and we'd have Ray watch a horse. Now, Ray was totally blind. And, we had this big thing. We competed with each other and pushed each other. But, he'd see if somebody had a scarf or something. He said he'll blindfold himself and whatever. And so the horse would go, and he'd tell he would be right on what that horse was doing. And I asked him one day, I said, I got to ask something. How are you telling left from right? And we were pretty much, for the most part, looking at dressage horses. They were, when they were trotting them out, they were posting. He said, well, as long as they're posted on the correct diagonal, I can tell left from right. And if they're posted on the wrong diagonal, I know which way the horse is going. It throws me backwards on everything. But he'd tell you right quick, horse was dragging a foot, horse was impacting the hard here, and all that. It's just like when you walk a horse in on concrete, and you hear him on the concrete, and you hear the heavy hit, you hear the slide of the foot, you hear the shuffle, you hear the twist, and in turn on like a dirt, if you got a dry arena, and you got a horse that's trotting out that looks like a crop duster off the back end, he's dragging his toes. He's sliding his back feet, he's dragging his toes. And I've had people that will sit there and tell me, yes, he's really engaging now. He's really using his back end. And, you can see him up in the arena, and you're down at the barn that might be several hundred feet away as they're trotting out. And it's like, yeah, I see that, but it's just looking at the small details and paying attention to what's going on.
Mm-hmm. As part of when you're evaluating a horse, you get the horse owner involved at times too. Tell us about how you do it and why that's important.
You've got to. It's a team approach. It's not just one person. I worked around a guy one time that he was a body worker, and it was always interesting because you had to have everybody involved. And as soon as the horse started going better, he's like, I did this and I did that and all that. And then when something didn't go right, it was pointing fingers at everybody else. Mm-hmm. But his thing was you had to have the farrier, you had to have the body worker, you had to have. He usually had also if you're in my program, you have to have a chiropractor and whatever. But it's a team approach on everything, and you need to understand the owner's expectations and talk with them so that maybe y'all are sort of on the same cue with that, because I do have people that have some very unreasonable expectations as far as what their horses are going to be able to do. And the other thing is, anytime you're working with movement patterns, if you're going to do a lot as far as we're working with looking at the movement pattern and how we're trying to get things dialed in, sometimes you need to back off of the horse for a while and give them time to adjust and ease them back into it, because they're using muscles in a different way than what they have been doing. If you ever push them, if you got a horse that hasn't been lifting his back and you get it where it can lift his back, and some of that is shoeing, some of that is saddle fit, some of the whole package. But we look at him, we decide we change some mechanics, and all of a sudden he's coming up, and they push him to the point he's getting really muscle sore, starts going into spasms. Guess what? He's going to push his back down because that doesn't hurt. Mm. So you can't overuse the muscles. And if you've got a horse that's been weak in his shoulder, and to me it's not high low so much, a strong shoulder, weak shoulder, but you get him engaged on that shoulder and he overworks it, all of a sudden he's going to want to start shortening back up because I'm sore here and it hurts. So we got to respect that a little bit as we're working horses. Anytime you do anything that alters a movement pattern, it alters how they use the muscles. And that's part of how, with the massage background, this is part of the information as to, okay, where's the horse developing? Where is it not developing? Where is it braced up and locked up? And what kind of movement patterns cause that? Mm-hmm. And so, but you can't over push them. You got to have everybody in line with it. On some of these horses that are competing hard that I do, which my heavy competitive horses are more 3-day eventers. But I just have a few horses that they've had a good hard run of it, and for the next several months, we're going to back off. We're not going to be competing. We're kind of letting them down a little bit. Can we start looking at being a little more aggressive at a point, when we're starting to bring them back up on what can we do to help with some glitches in movement we've been dealing with, which a bad movement pattern is a loss of energy in my mind, and getting the horse to use themselves more efficiently. And you need those periods. One thing to let a horse heal up, and the other thing is let's back off, let things settle down, let's readdress it, and let's start hopefully we can do a better job of getting the horse reconditioned more evenly.
You discussed having being involved with body workers and masseuse for the horse. Why is that important? I mean, you talked a little bit about it, but at what point do you bring them in? I know you're not necessarily bringing them in. The client is, but
the client, the trainer that I'm working with, that sort of deal, and it kind of varies with the program. On my end, the fact that I was working with Ray so much, and he was in New Zealand, he was teaching under the name of Horseback Basics, and was doing some teaching up here, and I ended up being involved in some of that as far as teaching people to become massage therapists. So at the time, I was massaging horses. But anyway, that's off down another weird rabbit trail. But no, that's typically up to the owner, and there's a big difference, between one and the other in people that are doing therapy, just as there is farriers. And it's just controversial, but you got to have, I want them communicating directly with me if they find something, because if they're not communicating directly with you, you're playing the game of telephone. And sometimes what you end up hearing is not what they're seeing, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. And that gets pretty convoluted, and it's kind of hard to work with and be effective at anything.
Right. When a horse needs some form of body work, how does that affect the feet and what you do?
Yeah, the better the body's working, the easier it is on my end as far as keeping hoof balance issues and compression problems under control. Because if the body's loosened up and they're not slamming the ground, or they're moving more even, carrying their weight more even, as a farrier, that always, if you got an odd compression problem, and the horse is, just for say, it's when he trots out, he's dog tracking, and you're doing what you can to keep him where he can go straighter. Because to me, that's a big thing. We got a horse that needs to work in diagonal movement patterns. Well, to get him to where he can do it equal as well one side or the other from my end, what I need to do is get the horse where he can go straight. And because a lot of these horses are moving diagonally constantly, I love to tell people, watch him coming down the center line at you, and if you can't get directly in front of that horse's legs, he's dog tracking. It looks like you need to stand off the side. He's not coming directly at you. But the freer the body is, the less damage there is to feet. And of course, on the other end, on their end, if they're fighting, some bad mechanics on the ground, it's gonna show up in the body. Right. And as far as they're not lifting, they're not coming through, they're not moving evenly. And the leg alignment, as farriers, you've got what would be the ideal perfect leg alignment. I'm not sure I've ever seen that yet, and we got to get them going in a direction despite that. Mm-hmm. So all of them, there's just a touch difference somewhere.
Right. And if they have a problem, let's say that they're a little base narrow, but it's because they're compensating for something. They're tight in the chest or whatever. If you're shoeing that before they get loosened up, you're not shoeing for that horse's true problems then either.
Yeah, I mean you're always chasing it, and the freer they are, the less weird chasing you have. You're always going to be chasing it. And, it's like saddle fit thing. Ray had me measuring saddles because they were measuring. There was an outfit in Australia, a small outfit, Icon saddle. It was a dressage saddle, and they were pre-building that, or they were pre-ordering them. So they were measuring trees, and some of them were coming to the U.S. And he actually had me measuring trees for him, and because most of them are coming to this part of the country because they wanted somebody to measure trees, and I went through his program enough that he trusted what I sent to him. But which most farriers don't do that. But I've always been looked at, this is an avenue, something that interferes with movement patterns. I need to know something about it. But if you got tack on that doesn't allow the horse room to lift, and you're trying to do everything you can to get him to come through in that back end, and playing with support, playing with breakover, playing with, whatever you may have to deal with. You might be shooting x-rays and seeing what your lateral alignment comes up and trying to realign the bone column to get him where he can function better. And then you're running into the saddle. There's a crash in the middle of somewhere, and the horse is going to object to it. That can have direct effect on stifles and hocks. It can have direct effect on movement pattern of the shoulder. It can have direct effect on the back lifting, which will throw head carriage off.
Mm-hmm.
So, everything is hooked together, and everything affects everything. Right. Just as a hind leg can cause him in the right situation. If he's dropping a hip, he brings the shoulder back to catch himself, and he shortens, rotates the shoulder back on that side. To think about the neck muscles, brachiocephalicus attached to the back of the skull, that can actually physically cock the skull of a horse. And there was a trainer I worked with, so he always liked to see if the ears were even. And if he had a horse that when the ear was dropped, he was cocking his head. And sometimes that can relate to the shoulders not being in the same position, because they're in a sling and they don't have to match up. Even ours, they don't have to match up, even though we have a collarbone.
One of the other things that you do when you evaluate a horse is you watch the rider on the horse, or whoever's working with that horse, whether it is
right,
whatever riders it is. Why is that important?
Well, it's like I did have a stint where I got to spend a little time with Dick Mansman and work out of his clinic a little bit back in the early 2000s, and we always watched the rider and the horse, and wanted to get them together, because there are horses that you can put on the lunge or trot out straight, and you'll get one thing, and you throw the rider and tack on them, and they call it rein lameness, and you can translate that to rider lameness if you want to. Riders aren't going to like hearing that, but it does happen. And there was a particular case, a horse we worked on down there. We do the horse about 3 times in the clinic, and he'd go back home and give it about 6 months. It came back. And the first time I went out there, we went out to the arena, and I said, "Doc, come here for a second." And her haunches were, if you looked at the seam of the center of pants and where the center of the horse was set off to the side a pretty significant amount. And one of her complaints was the horse was always uneven in the back end. And Doc flags her in and says, "Let's run an experiment." He shortened her stirrup on one side, pushed her up in the middle of the horse. And she says, that doesn't feel right, because I'm not sitting in the center of the horse. She'd sat like that her whole riding career, so that felt like the right position. But when he pushed the stirrup on one side and pushed her haunches into the center of the horse, the back end evened up, just that on its own. Mm-hmm. And then we did 6 months later, 6 months later, 6 months later, the same deal. And the horse did have some problems, low palmar angle, just crushed the heels on the front end, all this kind of deal. We get ahead of it, and you should come back. He says, "What are you doing?" Well, now the horse is starting to move good. We're going to shoe the horse the way we do when we show it, which part of that on the front end was they wanted the toe run forward for extension. And it's like, yeah, but you're locking the horse's shoulders up, and then he's crushing his heels. And, Doc, the last time she came in, Doc says, "We need to run an experiment." And she says, "I know." And she shortened the stirrup and evened up in the back end. But yet when she went home, she went back to the same thing every time. But, and that's, the rider, the way they carry their weight, it's like when Chris King was working with Doc Mansman, and she did a lot of stuff, with articles for Dr. Mansman and all that. We were there and we broke out a set of cheap bathroom scales, and you get somebody standing on it. And we did this at a horse festival one time, and I got on the scales, just talking to her and all that. And so where you got the reading where you can't read it. And I was like 35 pounds difference from left to right. Now on my left leg, one thing, I'm right-handed. The way I twist my body when I'm under a horse. And the other thing is injuries. I mean, I've had my left knee taken apart and put back together, and they can do it, but it's never quite the same. I would suggest not trying to bend your knee backwards. It can be done. Not a good thing, but it can be done.
It can't feel good.
I have to pay attention to that, because over time that affects my lower back and all that. So I have learned to keep things stretched out to keep myself going. And but if you can carry 2 water buckets with equal water and carry a lot more weight than the bucket with water on one side. And if the rider is sitting uneven on the horse, that's what we're asking the horse to do.
Right. You mentioned stretching. What do you do to sort of limber yourself up before a day showing?
Well, I have learned that I do a lot of stuff targeting, hips and lower back, hamstrings, and all that. I've kind of gotten where I do that every morning before I get moving. If not, I pay for it, and if I get slack, I pay for it. Mm-hmm. But that's a daily thing for me, and I'm still. I mean, I turned 65 in January, and I'm working 5 and 6 days a week under horses. And if I'm not working here, if I'm at home, I work around property, shop building, whatever needs to be done. And for me, I'd rather be working than anything else. Because why don't you want to go vacation? Well, it messes up my work. But you got to keep your bodies moving, your parts moving. There's a friend of mine that we started fairly close in time, and he's like, why do you do that? Your body hadn't got so many bends in it. And he said, I'm not going to waste any. And at this point, he's so locked up, he kind of goes up and down a set of stairs sideways. Mm-hmm. And it's like he can barely get under a horse, and he's still trying to work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you got to keep your body moving and some level of fitness, because people say, well, you're a farrier, that keeps you really fit. No, it really doesn't.
You do a little double duty on other things too. You have a podcast, Mike Stine Equine Dynamics podcast. It's designed to educate horse owners. Tell us about it a little bit.
Well, that kind of goes back to something that Tony Gonzalez told me right near the end of his life, because he'd gone through the strokes and all that, and his thing was, if you want to change the business, he said, farriers aren't going to change as long as they're making money. And I said, you got to get the public thinking. That will change the business, because if they, if they're completely ignorant, well, you can throw anything at them and it's good, right? Mm-hmm. But you got to get the horse owners thinking. And then, maybe some farriers will get fired because people are trying to do their homework. The problem with that is there's so much stuff out there with social media at this point. Some of it's not necessarily good information. And I've that people come up with a few deals. There was a horse here recently that I no longer work on, my choice. And I've been asked a couple of times, but they were really hardcore, because they're advertising 500 different styles of frog supports at this point. That's the big thing. And the vet that's working on the horse had talked to me. He said, they got somebody to put the frog supports they wanted on the horse, and the horse went lame. And, I'd run hoof testers lightly. If you're going to do hoof testers, go extremely light. But, one of the old school things was, oh, you want to see if a horse can take a frog support, throw your knife handle up on his frog, pick up the foot, load him on it. If he's trying to jump off of that thing, maybe he's not going to like so much pressure. But anyway, the vet had them cut the frog support out of the pads that were on the horse and walk the horse and get on the horse and ride it. It went sound. And then she said she wants to know if she'll come back, but then she's fussing because she said the horse went sound after we cut the frog supports out on this particular horse. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the frog supports don't do good things where they do good things, because I've put plenty of them on, but this horse just did not like the pressure at all. And I was kind of along that line just from the fact I'd been messing with it. But she's like, the owner is insisting that the horse is going to go lame if it doesn't have the frog supports on, when it was lame with the frog supports. And she's like, well, she wants to know if you'll come back. I'm like, yeah, I'm not fighting that.
Yeah.
Some situations you just need to sidestep and go on.
It's difficult sometimes working through some of those issues with horse owners. Some of them
Right.
understand what it is that's necessary for the horse, and some of them also have been horse owners for a while, so they have their anecdotal evidence that they rely on.
Right.
So that's kind of the thrust of what you're trying to do with the podcast is
Right.
provide that education.
Yeah. And, I've had people tell me before several times, oh, you can make a lot of money doing podcasts. The only one that's made any money on this thing has been Travis. And I guarantee he's not getting rich off of it.
Yeah. And Travis is your host.
But yeah, hopefully it stirs up some thinking. And it's like we were talking about the frog supports. Believe me, I am not by any means saying you shouldn't put a frog support on a horse, because there's plenty of them it has helped out and done great things for. It's just, everything is a case by case deal. And horses from left foot to right foot, they are not the same. The leg alignment's different. The foot grows different. There's no such thing as a matching foot, and then you throw an unbalanced human on top of the horse. Well, that throws out of whack that much more.
Absolutely. So where can people find it if they want to listen to your podcast?
It's Mike Stine Equine Dynamics. And I don't know how many platforms is that on now. I think there's about 30 some odd platforms on. You can get it on your iPhone. You can get it on iHeartRadio. You can get it on. I don't. Travis just tells me there's on this many platforms. I say,
okay,
good job. And I know Brian Quinsby was talking to me. So, well, how did you get it out on all these places? And I was like, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I said, I don't know. That's why Travis makes the big money. That's what he does. Mine is not the only podcast he does.
Right.
But, we're out in 30 some odd countries now.
Yeah. And you're getting a pretty good response from it too.
Getting some pretty good response. We're hitting about 20,000 downloads during the 30-day period. And he's also putting, shorts out. We have a YouTube channel, and sometimes we're dealing with Travis. He gets me twisted up and I get him twisted up. He's a completely non-horse guy. His wife has horses.
Right.
And, but he's got it out on, I think he said, was it 10 or 12, like where you could visually see it. And he's putting a bunch of shorts out, and he said, we're hitting around 17,000 connections in a month on that. Now that's not on any one particular one, but I know that, we had Simon Curtis on, and he put a little 10-minute short of Simon out on TikTok, and it within about a week got like 19,000 hits. And of course it's Simon, so
right. Yeah. He's
that Simon, me on my own is like, yeah, I don't know. But, we had another one with Kelsey Briggs, one of the riders I work for. Kelsey's always real high energy, and a couple of YouTube clips with Kelsey took off really fast. And then I've got others that, you might get 50 hits on, and I don't know sometimes why one takes off and another one doesn't.
Yeah. The 50 hits was the one that I was on.
No, I think that was just me. I think I do better when I've got somebody else on there.
And dovetailing along with that, continuing education is a big deal for you. You put up a lot of emphasis on it. Why is that so important to you?
Well, if it's kind of like one of my thoughts on things, and it's something that has to do with stuff I was told as a kid and everything else. If you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. Mm. There's no sedentary at one spot. You're either getting better or getting worse. Mm-hmm. And with what I went through with my own personal horse, it kind of sent me on a mission to find stuff. There's a farrier. I'm in Southern Pines right now. Farrier down here that we had done a little time together, working together. At one point in history, we lived together. But he said, I got a question for you. I said, what's that? He said, you went to the worst school and got the worst start of any farrier I know. I said, yeah, pretty much. I'm not going to deny that, because we had buckets that used horseshoes. Didn't get a new horseshoe one to work on with. And the first horses we shoed, they were selling meat at the time, because this was 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it's like we had these rank things. There's a half dead or they'd half kill you. We were trying to put shoes on. And, the first one I've nailed shoes on. I think I drilled him about 7 or 8 times with a nail. And I went to the instructor. He's going to abscess really bad. He says, no, he won't. Says he's shipping out tomorrow. He's going to be dead in 2 days. I'm like, dude, what? He's already been sold for me. But at least they served a good purpose. But, mm-hmm. After going through what I did with my mare, I called in people to help me, because I was in way over my head. And then I started learning stuff, and I thought, they didn't either. I went back to them and said, well, you didn't say to do that, or whatever. And I'm like, well, I didn't know. And I called on you guys because y'all had a lot more experience than I did. And then I started looking at, the movement patterns of horses. That's where I listened to one of Tony's lectures, and I was intrigued. And then Doc Redden, and I was always, I got a chance to start going up to Dr. Mansman's place when he was doing the farrier rounds, and ended up working out of there part-time. And, there's always more to learn, and you cannot encompass it all. Mm-hmm. And I've got a list of people I call on at times. I called Dr. Fred, which is a friend of mine, because somebody had brought up something about teeth affecting the back end of the horse and the jaw movement and all this sort of deal with me when we were talking about, he was talking about shoeing reining horses. Now the jaw moved really affected how the back end worked. Mm-hmm. And he was trying to explain it to me. So Dr. Fred is a veterinarian who has a interest in dentistry, I think is how he would put it. Not trying to state it wrong. There's some legal reasons why it's a special interest or whatever. But, this guy for a long time, he's done teeth and mouths and jaw problems and everything else. I was like, okay, Dr. Fred, what's really going on? Mm-hmm. So for me, sometimes it's easier to play phone a friend, but, right. There's so much out there and so much to learn. And, I hope, and the other end is you kind of get set into things and you miss things sometimes. So you need to go back. If some of the best education you do, even if you decide you're right, it makes you rethink everything you do. Right. And, because if you're not, you're slipping somewhere. Right. And, I have many times over the years thinking to myself, well, that's something I used to know. Where did I let it go? Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So you've attended the summit. We've talked about that a little bit. Right. We've also attended a couple of AFA conventions together. Right. Occasionally I hear, it's more than occasionally, I hear a lot of farriers say they just don't have time to take off from the shoeing business to go to clinics and conferences. Since you go to so many, how do you arrange your schedule to accommodate it? Well, I tell you, I got kind of a crazy schedule, because I kind of got where some years ago where they wanted to have a particular day in my schedule. Well, you schedule out further than everybody else. Mm-hmm. And some of the stuff that pops up, it's like it's a month out, they put it out there, and it's like I can't go because I've got some of my clients booked right now that are booked through June and July next year. Well, when the dates for the Hoof-Care Summit came out, I said, I'm going to the Hoof-Care Summit. When I got next year's book, I'm going to this, want to go to this, want to go to this. I went and I put them in my book, and then I start scheduling around that. Mm-hmm. And which is a problem, because I have people that call me
that aren't regular customers most of the time. I need something done this week. And I'm like, yeah, not in my world.
Mm-hmm.
I keep some days that are lighter days in case I have to shuffle stuff, which stuff always comes up, but you find a way to make it work. But I try to stick pretty close to my schedule, and you organize around it.
Right.
And I've, talking to farriers is like, well, I like to do it that week. And why do you do that? Because one thing, it keeps me off the phone. It keeps me from chasing stuff. And on the financial end, it keeps your money flow coming in a little more even, and you have more control on routing things out as far as I'm concerned. But you plan out ahead, like, sometimes I'm planning out 6, 8, 9 months ahead on what I'm going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I live by the book, and I'm completely non-techie, so I'll still use one of these.
Yeah.
And then this is next year's book, and you're already in here. So
There you go. I appreciate that.
yes, as soon as the calendar book comes out for the next year, I go ahead and get one. I don't immediately start booking clients in it, but I start figuring out, okay, what's coming up and what are the dates, and put that in. And then once I get that pretty well settled in, at least halfway through the year, then I can start looking at, okay, now I can start booking around that and building schedule around that. And it's no problem. And I talked to a young farrier not too long ago. He said, well, there's no educational opportunities, and I don't want to. And then I told him about one that Dr. Mansman has always been involved in up in Apex, North Carolina. And I said, well, I'm going here. I said, well, that's an hour and a half away. Yeah, but I'm an hour and a half from home right now. You just got to. And I figure on, with the Hoof-Care Summit, which I hate to say this, Jeff, by the time I come up there, pay for motel rooms, everything else, yours is probably the most expensive one that I always go to.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's not true, because I was at a Dr. Mansman's this last summer and the summer before, or excuse me, not Dr. Mansman's, Dr. Redden's. I get myself scrambled. But out at Dr. Redden's this past summer and the summer before, I went out there for a while. And I think the summer before that. Mm-hmm. So, you got to plan it in, and, the cost of good clinics is part of your business expense. So there was a few years ago, Simon was down here in Southern Pines, and I did a clinic with Simon Curtis, mm-hmm. and it was well spent time. And, I got evaluated by Simon Curtis, and got some advice from Simon Curtis. Yeah. And, it's like I will tell people, if you get a chance to do good clinics with good clinicians, you should go do it. You're not always going to agree with everything, and it's not always going to work into your program. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you need to get out and lay it on the line. And as far as like different groups testing, and I've been involved in a number of groups, and I've gotten out of them for various reasons. And I tell young farriers, I said, you ought to. And the absolutely worst shoe job I've ever done was doing a test. Mm-hmm. But you need to lay it on the line every now and then. And as long as these programs are bettering you, you should be involved in some of them at some level. When they start getting political, you need to say, well, bite me and walk off. Because there are some political games in any organization. I don't care. You can't get rid of it. It happens. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But at that point, you just need to go on somewhere else and find something else to dive into. Right.
Yeah. Now you had, as you alluded to, you've been involved in some leadership roles in the industry, most recently as a board of director with the International Association of Professional Farriers. And, a couple of years ago, more recently, the American Veterinary Medical Association, they came out with their Model Practice Act, and the Model Practice Acts, they're not law, but they get adopted by the individual states, right. and that helps govern who can who can practice veterinary medicine. It also defines what veterinary medicine is, and it's a rather long document to read. But part of the reason why the farrier industry pays attention to it is because it has the farrier exemption in it. And
Right.
the farrier exemption exempts farriers from being essentially accused of practicing veterinary medicine when they go about their normal work, trimming and shoeing horses. How important is that the farrier exemption in everybody's work, and why is that important to the
I think it's not. I've always, of course, if anybody knows me, I've always been very independent. As far as crossing the line, it's like when I was working with Doc Mansman. You know, you can shoe a horse for movement patterns. That's fair game for a farrier. And you might do the exact same thing, but you can't walk up to that horse run hoof test to say this horse is navicular.
Right. And
can I get the job done? Yes. But you got to be careful with that. And I try to be careful, very careful with that. And, you know, I tell people, I said, this is what I'm seeing. If this persists, we probably need to get a vet in here with an x-ray unit or whatever may be. But I'm not diagnosing lameness. I'm trying to work around movement patterns. And, you know, there are plenty of times the horse is screaming at you. And one of the things that to me has been an aggravation is horses that are probably subclinical laminitic horses, because, you know, until they hit the ground, nobody wants to call it. And then you got a lot of damage. But I was talking to, you know, Dave Nichols.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to Dave at one point, and this discussion came up. And he said, their hands are tied on a lot of stuff in England, and we got to go through the problem. And he said, some of the stuff that goes in with horseshoeing, as far as what's done over there, is worse than here. And I was like, Dave, why would you say it's worse than here? You guys got, you know, the most stringent educational program in the world, pretty much, as far as I understand it. He said, well, the thing is, he said, you get the same backyard cowboy shoeing over there as you do here, because once they get their license, you can do whatever. You know, unless you have a real problem. And the thing is that these guys are educated. Mm-hmm. So they know better, but yet they do it anyway, because people demand, I want somebody to come in here cheap and quick and do my horse. And they do, and they can make a decent living doing that. The other end of it, he said, you guys are the cowboys, so you can go out and try things, and we got to sit back and watch what y'all are doing over here with experiments and everything else. And once y'all have pretty well proven it, so as far as what you guys are doing here, we're about 10 to 15 years behind the curve, because we've got to get our board to approve it. Right. And we don't have the liberty to just try things like you guys do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So y'all are the guys that are making the changes in the business. Mm-hmm. And that was what he was telling me at that time.
Right.
And you know, that would be sad to lose the ability to experiment and change things. And none of us are trying to do anything that's going to be detrimental to a horse. None of us are ever intentionally going to do anything like that.
Right.
You know, and with any horse, you can read every textbook out there. You can have everything laid out in front of you. You can have x-rays, you can have your ultrasounds, whatever you may need, and everything fits that you should do that. And you're always going to have that horse says, I don't like this. Mm-hmm. It's like Tony Gonzalez used to say, there's the rules, there's the exceptions to the rules, there's the exceptions to the exceptions, and there's exceptions to that. And those horses are the ones that are really going to teach you something. And you know, I was always wanted to dive into to touch this horse because it's got weird stuff going on with it. Like, I want to go shoe it. I used to shoe a bunch of those horses for free to get to, but they taught me a lot. And I tell people, you're going to get in trouble working on a horse like that. We got him where he's riding. And, you know, one of the vet clinics I do that have done the most work for many years, young in my career, was playing with a horse they were going to put down navicular problems. I told the lady, I said, look, you got everything to gain. You got nothing to lose. If we can get this horse happier, do you want to lose your horse? No, I don't. So I basically did that horse for free, and we kept it alive for 20 years. And at that time, the vet wrote the lady a letter, "We are not responsible for," and it turned into that was, and I still to this day, it's like when they got something odd, not to say they don't send everything to me because I don't have time for it and they know it. But if we got something really tough or really odd going on, let's call Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And I try hard to get it worked in for him.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I've done stuff in their clinics with the vet looking over my shoulder because we're removing things out of weird things growing in a foot that shouldn't be there.
Right.
And but I'm not, to just go out to somebody's barn and do that. I'm not going to do it without being in with the vet. And there was a lady who said something about me working on a foot where we had a canker going and removing where I was and all that. And she's like, and the vet, he's under the horse with me. And she said something, well, why is he doing this? He says, well, at this part, he's better at it than we are. He's in feet all the time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, but at this point, I do a lot of work for them. There was a young vet that was working for him. So I got a question. You're not questioning me. He said, well, we were given special instructions. He said, when it came here, Smokey had a list of about 40 some odd farriers. Your name was separated out at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And they said, this is a problem. This was a problem. This is a problem. When it comes to Mike, back him up. When he asks you for something, work with him and watch, because you'll learn something. And I'm like, wow, that took about 40 some odd years. But the other end of it was during those years where I was learning, I would take the horses and work with them that nobody wanted to touch because they were in bad shape. And people said, you making money on them? No, because I ended up doing this horse for free just to get to do it. But it was pushing my limits and pushing my thinking. And, you got to be able to think your way through situations. And if it doesn't follow the guidelines of the book, those when it's not working, then you need a chance to back up and think, okay, what am I missing, and figure that out. And why is this not working? But those are the things that really teach you as a farrier. And
right.
You can go love the Laminitis Symposium, and I like going to good educational clinics. And but it's those tough cases that if you can figure them out, that are really going to better your skills and teach you hands-on. Sometimes it's the hard way, but that will make you better.
Right. Kind of wrap up the farrier exemption in the Model Veterinary Practice Act. This has been a 3-year process. In 2022, Dr. Frank Riley out of Pennsylvania brought it. He was on the board of directors for the IAPF at the time,
right?
And he brought it to the board's attention that there's talk that they want to eliminate that farrier exemption, and potentially even push licensing on farriers. The board asked him to go talk with the board of delegates and petition to make sure that the farrier exemption was retained, which that's having that dynamic with veterinarians and farriers working together to maintain something is a huge benefit. What do you think is the biggest strength that the industry has?
I'm not sure some days. The industry has changed so much. Of course, I came from very uneducated, very humble beginnings with it, but I think we are sharing more with each other than we ever have. And there's a lot of avenues that you can go to find further ed easier than you've ever been able to, as far as that goes. On the flip side of that, there's been a lot of information that has been thrown out there that is not necessarily good information that sometimes, and I'm going to say this with customers more, we'll get a hold of. And so, social media can be good. Social media can be very damaging. Mm-hmm. But, there's a lot more, I think that there's a lot more interaction with farriers than ever, sharing of ideas, and that kind of thing just makes us all better.
what's the most important area where you think we need to improve as an industry?
Well, you can take that down a bunch of trails. One of my things that I've really gotten where I like to talk to young farriers about is preparing for the future.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I was talking with Bob Smith, and he said that in a lot of ways, some of the skills are becoming less and less because there's so much pre-made.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to, we're losing skills. Now, there are some people that are diving into the handmade shoes like nobody's business, for sure. And they're doing, and if you look at what we were doing back in the 90s when I was beating on metal, it's like every 10 years you look at that and the quality of what's being produced by some of those guys is getting better and better. But for your average farrier, are they learning to do it? I mean, when I first started, you didn't buy pre-clip shoes because there wasn't access to them.
Right.
So you had to learn to pull a clip. And there's farriers out there that put clips on constantly that I'm sure cannot pull a clip. Mm-hmm. Some of them are not even firing up a forge. And the guys that I worked with were older farriers when I was young, and if I didn't do it right, they just shut me down, and as you come back and either readdress it or walk off from it. But it's like, are you cutting corners? Boom, done. Mm-hmm. We call them back up. What do you cut a corner? Until you learn not to do that, we got nothing to talk about.
Right.
And so that, and I started investing when I bought my first piece of property when I was 21 and started investing when I was 24. But this old fellow that I worked with cleaned up behind, took care of dogs, did stuff for him. I ended up staying there some when I was like 10 or 12 years, probably 10, 11 years old. But his one thing with him was learning to respect a dollar. Mm-hmm. And that was a constant thing with him. And I think that's probably why I started investing at that age. But there's so many farriers when they get to be my age that cannot retire. In my situation, I don't want to, But if you got somebody that's, late 60s, 70s, and they're injured and they've still got to make a living to make ends meet, that's a problem.
Right.
So I think that the business end of it is something that I had no idea about it. And I think just exposure to the right person at the right time had me thinking in that direction from a young age. But I know too many self-employed people that are, when they hit the point in their career where they can't produce money, they've got a problem. The other thing is always increase your skills, because, there was a time I was doing 40 trims on brood mares in 2 days, and I did that every other week plus whatever else. And physically at this point, I made decent money doing that. But physically at this point, I can't do that. And so you want to do later in your career, you want to do more high skilled work that you can build higher for that other people can't do, and capitalize on what makes you a little different from everybody else.
Right. Right. So you mentioned you started a rental property or something along that line. What would you recommend, or what would you recommend other farriers get involved in as far as investments or whatever?
Well, I do have rental property.
Yeah.
I set up a long time ago. Well, I started, I never touched anything when I was doing power line work, rolled that over. I set up a SEP, which is basically a self-employed, self-employed IRA or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And of course, nobody's matching the money, but I've got somebody that manages that for me. And I've put, I do a monthly draft that automatically comes out of my business. And people, well, when I get extra money, I'll do it. But if you wait 10 years and you're looking at years of compounded interest, you can't make up that time.
Right. Yeah.
So, and, nowadays, as far as the retirement, I think they're talking a lot more about doing Roths that are pre-taxed, because the SEP was untaxed, and I will get taxed on that money. I've also got Roths that I put money into.
Right. And taxes only going to
the the rental property is making sure that real estate is paid for, because I've got 10 acres sitting in a town that Charlotte grew over top of.
Mhm.
And I'm sitting on it because, well, the price is going up. I have people constantly after me about selling it. And they're like, I don't have to, it's paid for. And it's paid, the rental property takes care of all the taxes and everything on it. So
Mhm.
I'm not pulling money out of my shoeing business to keep it.
Right.
And it's paying taxes on the property I live in.
Mhm.
So, that's not a terrible thing. So far, my take on rental property is once I sell that, I probably won't invest in rental properties because I don't want to have to maintain it.
Right.
But there's a lot of different avenues you can do to get some other income coming in, and you need to put your money where you can make your money work for you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Mike. We really appreciate your time and your willingness to share your knowledge.
All right. Thank you for your everything, Jeff. And I will look forward to seeing you at the summit. And I guess I'm going to head down the road and get under a horse.